Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the News Today edition of 12th of December. My name is Anuj and I will be taking today's session. So let us begin with the today's session. In today's session, we will be covering 4 main news, then we will be covering 7 quick updates, and then we will be covering place in news. So in main news, in first news, we will be covering about that the Supreme Court has expanded the ambit of sexual harassment of women at the workplace, prevention, prohibition and redressal 2013 Act. In the second main news, we will be covering about India's first indigenous hydrogen fuel cell passenger vehicle, which has begun in Varanasi. In the third main news, we will be covering about corporate bond as the Niti Aayog has released the report on deepening the corporate bond market in India. And then in the fourth main news, we will be covering about the World Development Report of 2025, which has been released by World Bank. And then we will be quickly covering the also in news. Then in place in news, we will be covering Mexico today. So let us begin with the first news for today. So the first news is that the Supreme Court has expanded the ambit of sexual harassment of women at workplace and prevention, prohibition and redressal 2013. In this news, we will be covering about this act, how it is useful and what are the changes which has been brought by the Supreme Court. It is related to GS paper 2, which talks about important aspect of governance. It is also relevant in GS paper 1, where we talk about issues related to women, and GS paper 4 as well. So it is very important for our preparation. So let us begin with the discussion of this news. Firstly, let us discuss the context. What is the changes which have been brought in by the Supreme Court? So first of all, Supreme Court has held that if woman faces sexual harassment at work by an outsider, even then she may file complaint in the ICC in her organization. So this is the context. And what do we understand by this? So we understand that even suppose a woman is working in a company X and there is someone who has come from the different place and he has sexually harassed that woman, she can file the complaint with the ICC of the X company itself, not with the other companies. So this has increased the ambit. And what is the relevance of it? It is relevant because it is for women empowerment. So this act gives them power and independence to work independently without any fear of sexual harassment at their workplace. So this is a very broad act which we will be discussing in the next slide. And even this judgment is related to Sohail Malik case, enable the ICC constituted at the aggrieved woman's workplace. We have discussed with an example of companies X to exercise jurisdiction over an employee of a different workplace. So this is the context, and ICC is Internal Complaint Committee, okay, and it has power of civil courts. So this is the basic understanding of the context. Let us understand about the POS Act in detail. It can be asked in your prelims. You can substantiate your answers whenever you are writing about women empowerment or increase of women in the workplaces or the workforce. So this act is very relevant. Okay. So first of all, when it was established or when it was brought in 2013. But there were Vishaka guidelines which was given by the Supreme Court in 1997. Okay, it was related to Banwari Devi case, and they have said that we are laying down some protection for the women at the workplace until there is no legislative backing. So for that legislative backing, this act was brought in 2013. Okay, and about its coverage. So its coverage is very broad. Okay, so it provides protection to any woman in the workplace, or even if she is coming to that workplace and not working there, even then this act will cover that woman. and women employed in even in the dwelling places or houses, even the domestic house help are covered under this act. So this act is very broad. And if you are reading newspaper, you might have studied about that Supreme Court judgment regarding that are political parties covered under this act. Okay, so there was a news related to the judgment where Supreme Court has said that political parties are not considered as the workplace under this act. So that's why this act is coming in news recurringly and we are reading about it. Then coming to sexual harassment. So basically it defines sexual harassment. It clearly defined it and it said it include unwelcome act or behavior that are sexually colored. So that might be favoring female employee or touching inappropriately or passing a verbal or non-verbal communication. It is very broad. Okay. And that lead to creating a hostile or intimidating work environment for the women because they need a safe place to work. Okay, and it is responsibility of everyone, even the organization, even the government, even the fellow employees as well, to provide a safe environment so that the women can work independently and they can contribute to the economy as well as to their overall growth. If there are hindrances at the workplace, it will create an overall burden on the women to become financially independent. And if they are not financially independent, we cannot talk about the women empowerment. Okay, that's why this act. Now coming to the other provisions of this act, it expand the definition of workplace is very broad. It include the private organization, it include the government organization, it include the educational institute, it include even the places where women and the employees are transporting to another place to work. Even those places are covered. So its coverage or expanded workplace definition is very broad. Okay. Now coming to the Internal Complaint Committee, ICC. Basically it should be established in every company which has more than 10%. And in ICC there should be more than 50% of women and the head of the ICC should be women. So this is about ICC, Internal Complaint Committee. Any company which has more than 10 employees should constitute ICC. Now coming to the local committee. What is there or what it for? Okay, what is local committee for? We have talked about the places where 10% or more are working. But what about the places where there are less than 10%? Okay, so for that, there is a local committee. And what it is? So where workplace does not have an ICC. And where does workplace does not have ICC? Where 10 persons are not working. So district officers shall constitute a local committee to receive and redress the complaints. So basically, this act provide a holistic provision so that women can be protected at all the places. Okay. Lastly, penalties. Penalties include such as monetary fines or termination of employment depending on the severity of the offense. It includes other provisions as well that the complaint should be made in the 90 days. Other provisions such as if there is a frivolous complaint, action can be taken against the woman as well. So there are many provisions in this act, but the major provisions we have covered in this news. So now let us discuss PYQ related to this news. So question is from mains examination and it is from ethics paper of 2014. When we were discussing the context, we have said that it is important for GS1, GS2 as well as for GS4. And what is the question? Question is, we are witnessing increasing instance of sexual violence against women in the country. Despite existing legal provision against it, the number of incidents is on the rise. Suggest some innovative measure to tackle this menace. So here you have to discuss about the increasing instant, you can support with the data. Then you have to talk about the legal provision under which, or one of which is POS Act. Then you have to talk about creative measures such as Chuppi Todo of UNICEF. Okay, that will make your answer very detailed and it will fetch you extra mark. So this was all about the first news. Let us move to the second news for today. So second news for today is that the India's first indigenous hydrogen fuel cell passenger vessel begins in Varanasi. In this news, this context in itself is an important. Then in this news, we will be learning about the hydrogen fuel cell, what are their advantages and what are limitations to hydrogen fuel cell. Then we will be solving one PYQ related to this news. It is related to GS paper 3, which talks about sustainable development. So let us begin the discussion of this news. So context, we have already discussed the context, and this vessel will run on hydrogen fuel cell system for marine uses, okay, which uses a fully indigenous low temperature proton exchange membrane. Basically hydrogen cells, but it includes low temperature proton exchange membranes. We will be discussing about its mechanism in the next slide. It is very important to know about the fuel cell and their advantages, their working, as well as their limitation. So if there is a direct or indirect question in your prelims or mains examination, you can solve that question. So let us discuss the mechanism which is involved in PEM cells. So first of all, it makes electricity from hydrogen without burning it. Then how it make it? So this is an diagram. Here there is anode and here this is cathode. Here we bring out the H2. You might be aware that H2, that is hydrogen, is most abundant in the nature. And there is one interesting fact as well, that is when proton and electron combines, they can lead to formation of hydrogen. That means the division of hydrogen here take place, that is into H plus, which is passed by this membrane. There is a catalyst here, which is usually platinum. Okay. And this pass through this membrane where it will attract with O2 and it will lead to the formation of H2O, that is water. And electron is not passed through this membrane. That is passed from here, from anode to cathode. That is the direction of movement of electron, that is from anode to cathode. And the direction of electric current is from cathode to anode. Don't get confused. The direction of electron is from anode to cathode and direction of electricity is from cathode to anode. This is the simple working of hydrogen fuel cell. Okay, I hope you have understood it. Let us read out it again. So working principle involve an electrochemical reaction. So basically electrochemical reaction is taking place here and electrochemical reaction is producing electricity. If someone asks you that what energy convert from which energy to which energy the fuel cell convert, it convert the chemical energy to electrical energy. So that is the basic function of fuel cell. Then coming to that, hydrogen enters the anode. Here the hydrogen is entering, which is then divided into protons and electrons, and that protons pass through the membrane. We have discussed it. Hydrogen enters the anode where a catalyst split into proton and electron. And that catalyst can be a metal like platinum. Okay, so that is a basic working of fuel cells. Okay, now we will understand its advantages and the disadvantages. Coming to the advantages, first, it leads to zero emission. There was one PYQ related to this information. When we were reading its working, its byproduct was H2O and heat. So there is no harm to the environment. Okay, so it is zero emission. Secondly, it delivers high power density. What is the meaning of high power density? Basically, high power density means that the energy is there, means high energy is there in the small volume. That is the meaning of it has high power density. Next, it leads to quick startup, as there it can function on the low temperature as well. If you have a diesel vehicle, you might have noticed that in winters there are issues in starting of the diesel vehicle, but as it operates at the low temperature, there are no issues of quick startups. Then quiet operation. Why the operation are quiet? Because there are no moving parts in the fuel cells. Then there will be few wear and tear, as well as the whole operation will be very quiet. Lastly, it is high, it has high efficiency. That means it converts the energy directly from the hydrogen to electricity. That's why its efficiency is more than the combustion engines. What are the combustion engines? Basically, combustion engines are the vehicles which we are using nowadays, such as petrol and diesel. Okay, so these are the advantages of the hydrogen fuel cell. Let us understand its limitations as well. First limitation, high cost of materials. When we were discussing about the working, we discussed about a catalyst. And what was the catalyst? Platinum. So it is a very costly element. That's why its cost is very high. Secondly, availability of clean hydrogen. We have discussed that the hydrogen is most abundant, but its availability on the earth as pure hydrogen is difficult. That's why there is a mission, that is National Hydrogen Mission, where we try to get hydrogen from water by using the renewable energy. That's why second issue, availability of clean hydrogen. Thirdly, there is durability issue with the membrane between the anode and cathode. This membrane is not durable in the fuel cell. That is the third issue of this fuel cell. Okay, so these were the limitations with the fuel cells. Okay, now let us discuss a PYQ related to this news. What is the PYQ? It is from 2010 prelims, and the question is, hydrogen fuel cell vehicle produce one of the following as the exhaust. Okay, we have discussed under zero emission point. Okay, and the options are A, NH3, B, CH4, C, H2O, D, H2O2. So byproduct is water and heat. As heat is not given as option, so the answer will be C. Okay, so this was all about the second news for today. Let us discuss the third main news. The third main news is related to corporate bonds. And the news is that the Niti Aayog has released the report on deepening the corporate bond in the market. In this news, we will be understanding about these corporate bonds, what are their significance and what are their share. Okay, so this is given in this report. This we will be discussing. It is related to GS paper 3, where syllabus talks about economic development. So let us begin with the discussion for this news. Firstly, the context. We have already discussed. Let us understand about the corporate bonds. So corporate bonds are debt instrument. Okay, this is important. They are the debt instrument issued by the private or the public institute corporation to raise fund for purpose such as expansion, infrastructure, or the overall business growth. Okay, many a time UPSC has asked question from the capital and the money market. We will be discussing the PYQ after the discussion of this news. Let us first understand what is given in this report. So this report has provided a framework that how there can be a increase in the usage of the corporate bonds. And it has provided about the bond market of India. And it has showed that maximum bonds are issued to government, central government, then state development loan bonds. Then it has also talked about treasury bills, then corporate bonds, then commercial paper, and then certificate of deposit. So the highest percentage is of central government, 45%. Then state government around 25%. Then treasury bill are only for 4%. Then corporate bonds are around 20%, 22%. And remaining commercial paper and certificate of deposit are nearly 2%. So it is given clearly in the report of the Niti Aayog. Okay, and what are the meaning? Okay, so basically the market is divided into money market and the capital market. So money market is a market where the debt or the bond is issued for less than 1 year, and capital market is for more than 1 year. And the example for it is government, central government bonds, state development loans, and the corporate bond as well. They can be issued for more than 1 year. When we talk about treasury bills, these comes under the money market, and they can be issued for less than 1 year. And they can be issued only by the central government, not by the state government. Okay, they can be issued by the central government. Then we have commercial paper. They are also money market instrument, and they can be issued by the companies. Then we have certificate of deposit. They are issued by financial institution, and they also falls under the money market. Okay, you should be very clear about these concepts about money market, capital market, for how much long these bonds can be issued and what are their benefit. So this was the context related to this news. Let us move forward with this news. So the report talks about the status of corporate bond in India. It said that it constitute about 15 to 16% of Indian GDP. And it said that it is growing. But this 15 to 16% number is very low when we compare to the countries such as South Korea, which has around 79%, Malaysia, which has around 54%, and China, which has around 38%. Okay, but it has said that it is increasing at a very fast pace. That is around 12% of annual growth rate, and it has increased from 17.5 trillion in 2015 to 53.6 trillions in 2025. So this is the status of corporate bonds in India. Okay, now coming to its advantages. First advantage, that it diversified funding. So basically corporate are dependent on banks and financial institutes. If the corporate bond market will strengthen, they have the diversified funding source. Secondly, it lead to saving in the market. If you have read the today's newspaper, there is a report that the FPI are running out of the equity market of the India, that is stock market of the India. But household saving and people from the household saving are investing in the stock market of India. Okay, that is a report, and that news reporting is given in the today's Hindu newspaper. So that is the second advantage of corporate bond mechanism. Thirdly, it lead to lower borrowing cost. Okay, as there will be diversified funding sources, then the borrowing cost will come down. Okay, this is the demand and supply mismatch. Okay, if supply will be more, then the demand will be there, but that will come down. Okay, that's why the cost will be lower. Fourthly, it will deeper the financial market. Okay, for efficient pricing as well as the risk management. Okay, so these are the four benefits of the corporate bond market in India. Now let us discuss the next part of this news. Next, it has talked about the challenges which are there to corporate bond market. First of all, it talks about the regulatory overlap and fragmentation. Okay, it is saying that there are regulatory overlapping as well as fragmentation in the regulation, and it has given example of SEBI and RBI, that these autonomous institutions are regulating them, but their regulation is overlapping as well as there is fragmentation. Secondly, it talks about extensive disclosure requirement, especially for the lower rated and the infrequent issuers. So the corporation which have the lower rated or they don't issue corporate bond at a much faster pace, they have to distinguish or they have to disclose in a very extensive manner. Okay. Thirdly, it talks about in weakness in the credit rating agency framework. This in itself is an important topic for your UPSC examination. And what are the issues in the credit rating agencies? Basically, they work on the issuer space model. Suppose they have to give credit rating to a corporation, but they will take money from that corporation itself. So it will leads to conflict of interest. Suppose I have to give you grades and I am taking money from you to give that grade. So how fairly I can give grades to you? That is the meaning of this. Okay. Secondly, there are high level entry barriers for credit rating agency in India. That's why there are very few credit rating agency in India. Okay. Fourthly, there are other barriers as well, that such as high entry cost for the corporate bonds, information asymmetry, that is the information is not there that where they can issue and from where they can get the money, and as well as the also there is an issue of absence of secondary market. So these are the challenges which are given in this report. This report also provide the way forward. Let us discuss the way forward which is given in this report. It's talk about three-phase solution. Basically, it try to handle the challenges which are there in this report by these recommendations, and it provided a three-phase solution. In first phase, it talk about streamlining of inter-agency regulation. Okay. That means there should be a regulation based on inter-agency regulation. Secondly, it talks about standardize the disclosure norm. That means that we have talked about there should not be extensive disclosure norm. And it also talks about the simplifying of assurance procedure. In the second phase, it talks about that there is need to strengthen the bankruptcy and resolution process by the improving of the IBC effectiveness. In the last week, there was a parliamentary committee report which talks about the ineffectiveness or the lower coverage ratio by the IBC. That was about 32%. So here also Niti Aayog is saying that there is need to strengthen the bankruptcy and resolution process by improving the IBC effectiveness. We have read about, or you might have read about the IBC in the last week, where a parliamentary standing committee given a report regarding the IBC and how it can be further strengthened. Okay. Secondly, it talk about enabling better market access for the lower rated debt. Okay, so that the even the lower rated debt can have the better access for the market. In the last phase, in the phase 3, it says that there should be focus on the deeper market integration. That means still the market integration is very at the very surface level. So there is a requirement that there should be a focus on the deeper market integration. Then it talks about a independent bond market regulator. In the challenges we have discussed that there are issues with the overlapping and the fragmentation of the regulation. That's why this report has said that there is need for independent bond market regulation. And lastly, development of digital ecosystem, so that there should be a transparency as well as accountability by this ecosystem. So these were the recommendation which was given by the Niti Aayog to increase the corporate bond market in India. Okay, so with this, we cover this news. Let us discuss PYQ related to this news. There are two PYQ. First from 2020 prelims examination and another one is from 2018 prelims examination. Let us discuss the 2020 prelims examination PYQ. With reference to the Indian economy, consider the following statement. Commercial paper is a short-term unsecured promissory note. We have discussed this. This is a correct statement. Certificate of deposit is a long-term instrument. We have discussed this. This is also a short-term instrument. So this is the wrong statement. Then the first and the fourth option get eliminated. Sorry, second option gets eliminated. Okay. Then the third option, call money is a short-term finance used by the interbank transaction. We have not discussed this in the news, but it is an correct statement. Then the fourth, zero coupon bond are interest bearing. They are not interest bearing. So the answer will be 1 and 3, that is C. Okay, now coming to the 2018 question. Consider the following statement. The Reserve Bank of India manage and service Government of India securities, but not any state government securities. Basically, they also provide service to state government securities by going with the agreement with the state government. So this statement is incorrect. Treasury bills are issued by the Government of India and there are no treasury bills issued by the state government. We have discussed the exact statement. This is an right statement. Then the third, treasury bills offer are issued at a discount from the par value. Okay, this is also an correct statement. Then the answer will be C, 2 and 3. So this was all about the third news for today. Let us discuss the fourth news. So the fourth news is related to World Development Report of 2025. So this report in itself is important. Its name, UPSC can ask by which institution this report is released. That is World Development Report, that is released by World Bank. And what this year report talks about, it talks about standard for development. Okay, it talks about standards as well as talks about how these standards create a hindrance in development of the developing countries. So this is the basic about this news and it is related to GS paper 3, which is talks about economic development. So let us begin the discussion for this news. Firstly, we have briefly discussed the context. Okay. So this report has highlighted how a growing web of international standards is reshaping global economy and affecting the developing countries. So this is the basic information given in this report. And this report has given the example of CBAM. And what is CBAM? It stands for Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. It is a carbon tax introduced by EU. Okay, so basically, if some product is going to EU, it should follow the same standards, or the carbon effectiveness or the carbon released by that company should be as the same standard which is there in the EU. And this standard is leading to the extra burden on the developing countries. Here they have given the example of Mozambique and Egypt. So basically, Mozambique export aluminium to EU and Egypt export the nitrogen based fertilizers to EU. Now they have to comply the standards of EU that will propel or that will burden these countries with the extra financial as well as the mechanisms to export to EU. So this was the example given in this report, and that is the first line which is saying the same. It highlights how a growing web of international standards is reshaping global economy and affecting the developing world. In this report, they have also provided how standards are beneficial, but they have focused on how this is creating a verge between developing and the developed world. Okay, and what is the meaning of standards? Basically, standards are said rules for common use underpinning consistency, compatibility, and quality in system, process, and product. That is the basic meaning of standard. Before understanding the disadvantage, let us understand the advantage which is given in this report. So basically, report says that the standards are very important for economic development. Okay, if there are same standard across the globe, it will reduce the transition cost, as well as the applying or the applications of these standards will be very easy, as the standard from one country to another country will be same. That is the first advantage given by this report. Secondly, this report is saying it also leads to national security. And how it leads to national security? As these standards enhances the national competitiveness and protect from the technological, financial, and environmental risk. Basically, there will be labels on the product and they will be telling about the ingredients, and the local or the domestic government will be checking with the mentions on the labels. That's why it will lead to national competitiveness and also protects the nation from the technological, financial, as well as the environmental risk. Okay, then it says that it also lead to social development. Okay, if you want to check someone's health or someone's education, you will be checking according to their standards. That means against a standards. Suppose there is a student from the 5th class, so there might be some standard against which you will be checking the aptitude of that student. So that's what this report is saying, that it is important for social development as well. And it has said that it improves education as well as the healthcare through the quality standards. That means the standards for the healthcare as well as the education will be equalized, or there will be a systematic standard so that we can check the healthcare as well as the education system. And they have supported it with the example as well, that is standards like childbirth checklist for hospitals have reduced maternal death by nearly 47% in India. That is the example they have given related to social development. Lastly, they have talked about the governance as well. Okay, they have talked about the recruitment as well as the procurement. Suppose for recruitment there is a established standard, as well as for procurement there is a established standard, then there will be very low chances of corruption. That does not mean that corruption will be eliminated, but the chances for the corruption will get reduced. That is the meaning of this statement. So these are the importance of standards which are given in this year's World Development Report, which is released by World Bank. Now let us discuss the challenges. We have discussed one challenge at the starting itself. Now let us discuss the two more challenges which are given in this report. So first, it is saying that these standards are being used as a weapons in the trade war. You might be aware that there is rise of protectionism after the Trump became the president of USA. There are tariff wars and there are other mechanisms so that the globalization or the import and export of products can be hampered. So this report is saying that even the standards are acting as a weapon in the trade wars. And it has highlighted a data which says that from 15% in the late 1990s, now standards affects the 90% of global trade. In 1990, they were affecting the 15% of global trade. Now they are affecting the 90%. So they can act as a non-tariff barriers. There are tariff barriers as well as there are non-tariff barriers. So these standards can act as non-tariff barriers. Then they talked about low representation of developing countries. Okay, they say that on an average, developing countries hold only 1/3 of ISO's standard setting committee's seat. So if developing countries members are not there when these standards are formed, how they will able to make standards for the developing countries? That will lead to that the developed world is making these standards for the developed world. But those standards have to be followed by the developing and the non-developed world. That creates a hindrance in following these standards. But it provides a way through as well. So it gives a diagram that is, suppose this is an international standards and these are the domestic standard. It says that first we need to adapt to the international standards. Then we have to align, that means we have to reach the domestic standards to the international standard. Then we have to author that shape the international standards so that our export can become more competitive and there can be growth. So this is the highlight of this report which we have discussed. Okay, let us discuss one PYQ. PYQ is not directly related to this news but indirectly related to this news. Okay, it is from 2025 mains examination. And the question is, what are the challenges before the Indian economy when the world is moving away from free trade and multilateralism to the protectionism and bilateralism? So one point you can write about the trade standards that are being used as a trade weapon. Okay, so this was all about the fourth news for today. Let us discuss so place in news for today is Mexico. And the context is that the Mexico has announced up to 50% tariff on imports from its non-preferential trade partner, which include India and other countries such as China as well. In this news, we will be covering about the Mexico as a country, its geographical feature as well as the political features. So let us look into the map. So Mexico share borders with United States, Guatemala and Brazil. These are its land borders, and when we talk about the maritime border, it's shared with the Gulf of Mexico as well as the Pacific Ocean. Okay, and Tropic of Cancer passes through Mexico, and that Tropic of Cancer also passes through India. That's why there are sometimes we call that the food of Mexico and India are similar, not same but similar. Okay, and when talks about its member, it is a member of OECD, it is also a member of UN and also the member of G20. There was a previous year question when UPSC asked about the member of G20. Okay, and Mexico was given an option there in the one of the option, and its major mountains range are Sierra Madre and major rivers is Rio Grande. So this was all about Mexico, and its context is that it has announced up to 50% of import duty or on the non-preferential trade partner, which include India and other countries. Okay, so this was all about the place in news for today. Let us discuss quick updates for today. So the first quick update for today is UN Champions of the Earth Award. And why this is in news? It is in news because IAS officer Supriya Sahu has been awarded with this award along with four other persons, and she is awarded for her leadership on critical environmental challenges in India, which include the plastic pollution as well as the wildlife conservation. Okay, she has basically worked to remove plastic pollution as well as she have worked for wildlife conservation, especially in the mangroves region. Okay, and she is working in Tamil Nadu. Okay, so now let us understand about this award. Basically, it is given by UNEP, that means United Nations Environmental Program, and it is the highest environmental honor of the UN. It was started in the year 2005, and basically it is given for the person who are working on innovative and sustainable solution to address the triple planetary crisis. And what is the triple planetary crisis? It includes the crisis of climate change, nature and biodiversity loss, and pollution and waste. So these are known as triple planetary crisis. That is climate change, nature and biodiversity loss, pollution and waste. And IAS officer Supriya Sahu has been awarded with this year UN Environment Champions of the Earth Award, and it is awarded by UNEP, that stand for United Nations Environmental Program. Okay, now let us move to the second quick update. Second quick update is about Project Suncatcher. Okay, it will be started in the year 2027. Okay, but the context here is that the Google CEO has announced that the company has begun work on a long-term research initiative, Project Suncatcher, which aims to put solar powered data center in the space. That is the important aspect, that they are trying to put data center in the space. And what are data centers? Basically, these are the IT backbone of a company, where a company store, process and disseminate the data. These are known as data centers. We will be understanding about Project Suncatcher in this. Please be very clear, it may be started from 2027. That is the deadline given by the Google. Okay, and it aims at building a solar powered satellite constellation capable of performing large scale machine learning program at the space level. And what are its advantages? Basically, if they are investing so much, there might be some advantages. First advantage is that it will avoid the environmental impact. Okay, whenever you might be listening or reading about the data centers, you might be reading that they produce a lot of heat and they require a lot of clean water. Okay, so that is the first advantage. Secondly, they reduce vulnerability such as power outages. So they are dependent on solar power in this space. There will be other reduction in the vulnerability such as under cable cuts and the natural disasters. So these are the reduction in the vulnerabilities. These are self-understood. Lastly, they will facilitate the data sovereignty. Basically, these data centers are processing data from different countries. But different countries have different rule for the processing of their data to carry out from one nation to the other nation. But as these data center will be in space, there will be no issue of national jurisdiction. That's why these are beneficial to the data terrestrial data centers. That is the meaning of this statement that says it will facilitate the data sovereignty as outer space is not subjected to the national jurisdiction under the Outer Space Treaty of 1967. Okay, that is the meaning of this statement. Now let us move to the next quick update. Next quick update is related to supernova. Okay, in 2024 there was an indirect question on supernova. There was no direct question, but there was indirect question in the prelims examination. And what is the context? That the recent NASA's James Webb Space Telescope has observed one of the earliest supernova recorded. In this news we will be learning about the supernovas and about the James Webb Space Telescope. Basically, it is under NASA, but it was a collaboration between NASA, European and Canadian Space Agency, and it tried to explore the origin of the universe. Okay, that is the James Webb Space Telescope. Now coming to the supernova. Basically, these are the explosion of the stars, and these are basically of two types. One is core collapse supernova, where a massive star which is up to 8 times of the sun exhausts from nuclear fuels, and there will be more gravity and it will collapse. Then that is core collapse supernova. And if the star is more than 10 times, that can lead to formation of black hole. Okay, second type is thermal runaway supernova. In this supernova, there is emanation of a dwarf star, and in this there are two stars orbiting one another. In these two stars, one should be a dwarf star. Then there will be a collision which will lead to the supernova. Okay, so this was about supernova. Okay, in 2024 prelims examination, the definition of this was given, but it was matched against pulsar. So if you are very clear with the meaning of supernova, you could have correct or you could solve that question of 2024 prelims examination. Okay, so this was about supernova. Let us move to the next quick update. And next quick update is about Charlchung festival. This is a festival which is happening second time, and the context is that it is happening second time. And the context is that the Assam's Majuli, it is an island which is hosting the Charlchung festival to revive Asia's first protected royal bird sanctuary. So there are two important facts here. One, this Majuli island, we will be reading about this in the news, and the another, this is it is for reviving the Asia's first protected royal bird sanctuary. Okay, and this sanctuary has a 392-year-old legacy, and it was established in year 1633 by the Ahom king who was known as the Swargadev Pratap Singha. Okay, so this was about the royal bird sanctuary. It is the Asia's oldest bird sanctuary. Now coming to the Majuli Island. It is the world's largest river island. Very extreme statement that should be remembered. It is the world's largest river island which is there on Brahmaputra. Okay, this was all about this news. Let us move to the next quick update. The next quick update is about Ratley project, and the context for this news is that the construction at the Ratley project in the Kistawar face a shutdown threat. So the context is not important here. We will be knowing about the Ratley project. Basically, Ratley project is there on the Ratley river, which is the tributary of Chenab river. You might be reading about Indus Water Treaty as well. In Indus Water Treaty, the Chenab river water is for Pakistan. That means western flowing rivers are there for Pakistan. Okay, but on that river, runoff river water project are allowed. What is the meaning of these projects? Basically, they do not hinders the flow of the river. That is the meaning. Okay, and its location, it is located in Kishtewar district of Jammu and Kashmir, basically, and the Chenab is the key tributary of Indus, and it is formed by Chandra and the Bhaga stream. This was about the Chenab river. We also learned about the Ratley hydroelectric project. Okay, now let us move to the next quick update. The next quick update is about Convention Against Discrimination in Education. It is a 1960s convention, and the most important fact that it is not ratified by India till now. That's a very important fact, that this convention, which is a 1960s convention, is not ratified by India. Okay, and the news or the context of this news is that the UNESCO has unveiled a report titled Right to Education, Past, Present and Future, which reflect on the achievement of this convention. In this news, we will be learning about this convention and what are its major objectives. Okay, so its genesis, as we have already discussed, is 1960, and it was adopted by UNESCO. And it is a legally binding international instrument which is entirely dedicated to right to education. Even the Indian Constitution contains a provision related to right to education. Okay, so similarly, it is there for right to education, and it basically provide some obligation which include education as a fundamental right, and there should be free education at the primary level, and this at the secondary and the higher secondary level the education should be accessible to all, and education should not be a discrimination. That means there should not be discrimination in providing education. These are the some provision under this convention. And the important fact, India has not ratified this convention. And what is the name of the convention? Convention Against Discrimination in Education, 1960. Okay, now let us move to the next quick update. So the next quick update is about the narco test. Okay, whenever you are watching any thriller movie, you might have heard this term, narco test. And what is the context? The context is that the Supreme Court has held that any forced or involuntary narco test shall be unconstitutional and invalid. Suppose I am not giving permission for conducting narco test on me, that result of that narco test will be unconstitutional as well as invalid. So that is the context. Now let us understand about narco test. Basically, it is a process of investigation where the accused has given some sedation so that he is not there in his or her senses and can reveal the information. That is the basic meaning of narco test. No one will ask you the meaning of narco test, but their related provision and the Supreme Court judgments are very important. The first related provision is Article 20. What does it say? It says that one cannot act witness against himself or herself. That is the meaning of Article 20. That's it. Article 20 of Constitution provide for protection against self-incrimination. That means that we cannot act as a witness against ourselves. That is the meaning of Article 20. Then there are some guidelines given by the Supreme Court in the Selvi guidelines. Okay, that says that without free consent, okay, any such test would be unconstitutional and their result will be invalid. So similar judgment is given again. That is from Selvi guidelines. Then there are some other judgment as well, such as Manoj Kumar Saini case and Vinobhai case, which has said that the court held that these tests do not confirm the guilt. Only the information given in the narco text can help in the investigation. they does not conform to guilt, only for helping in the investigation. This was said in Manoj Kumar Saini and the Vino Bhai case. Okay, so this was all about the also in news for today, and this completes the today's session for news today. To read further on our current affairs or to our solve smart quizzes, you can visit our digital current affairs website, and please solve the question which are visible on your screen. Thank you and all the best for your preparation.